Well, hey everybody. I think we should be back on here, all good to go. It's been a minute since I've done Rumble Live. So thanks for being here, everybody. We got Cheryl, Marlena, Julie, and Will Live in the chat. Welcome, guys. Yeah, this is going to be an exciting presentation. Darth has been very excited about putting this together, and he's got a lot to unpack and go over. And I think it's sort of bringing us into a much larger series and lots of topics to go over in just the spirit of religion itself, and how this demon has shown up in so many ways. So just to give an introduction, this is going to be the first of probably many on the topic of the religious agenda and what was the purpose of this creating of these institutions, and how have they shown up in this reality. So I'm really excited to get into this one, and really grateful to have the gnosis and to be joined by my dear brother Darth. So welcome to the show, brother, and thanks for putting all this work together to go over this. Do you have any opening comments or things to talk about first?
Well, thank you for allowing me to participate in this process. This is not an easy task. It's a huge topic. I've put a lot of time into it, and and it's not done yet. Uh, this will be this will be many Sundays of us tackling this issue. But I do want to say that it is doable. These are not unanswerable questions. We can achieve clarity of vision, and we're going to accomplish our goal. And even just today, we're going to make a lot of progress, and we're going to I hope to be revealing a unique perspective that others may not have encountered before. And and today we're going to really try to lay a good foundation on how we can examine not just Islam, but all religious ideas. And all ideas are religious. And and to develop some tools that we can use
Mhm.
to move forward with not just Islam, but all religions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, religion is such a large aspect of society, what we've been born and raised in. And even if we didn't grow up in a religious household, it still permeates all of civilization. So to really know this thing is very helpful, because then we can sort of identify it's a very unnatural it's a very unnatural um creation. It's not something that's aligned with the benevolent goodness of creation. It's something that's constructed solely for the purpose of control. Um, so the more that we can see the inner workings of how these things came about, what was their initial intent, and how has it been steered since then, helps to better prepare us for how to deal with it when it shows up in our lives. And hopefully we all can learn the lesson so we don't go through uh, these religious uh, ideas any longer, and just move back to who
Pure spiritualism.
pure spiritualism, which is that you are connected to source creator, because you're an aspect of that source creator. You are not separate from that. And you don't need a middleman. You don't need an organization. You don't need a priest. You don't need a shaman, a guide, a guru, anyone to get in between you and that source energy, because you are that. So anything outside of that is truly a false idol. It's something that's created um, solely for the purpose of control and domination. So yeah, let's jump right into it. You want to just jump into the
Yeah.
presentation? So we've got a presentation put together. Well,
Who asked the original question?
yeah. So this came from Olaf, who always has some great questions whenever he asks, and he asked about the Quran and where he could find a good copy of it that had the least amount of distortion to it, and sort of was just asking about um, sort of just asking about like Islam in general and how that came about. And so yeah, that sort of prompted, I asked that to Darth, and he the wheels started turning, and he got,
Yes, the spark was lit.
yeah. So it's been exciting to see that process unfold. And it's this kind of stuff, like I've put Darth's information in the description of the show, and I'll continue to do that for this series and other ones that we do together. But it's this kind of stuff that I want to see Darth be unlocked to the fullest extent. So like we've made great strides since I've been here to help free up some more time so that he can have some more time to devote to this. But this is the kind of stuff that really gets me excited, is like seeing these kind of topics fleshed out and getting more of just all the wisdom that you've acquired over your lifetime get to be put on in presentation style and on a page. And
Perhaps not just this lifetime.
well, yes.
Sometimes I know things I shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, we never end. There's no end to
I'm
us.
not complaining,
Yeah.
though it makes life interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So I say that just to put it out there that the more help that we can give to Darth to have more time to devote to these kind of topics, the more we can spit out these kind of presentations and put them out there. So I've
And I'm
put,
deeply grateful. I
yes.
really am.
Yes. So thank you to all who have helped, whether it's financially or otherwise. I've put all his links in the description as well. So if you want to help chip in just to take away any of the stresses of the day to day so that he can have more time to devote to this, that's greatly appreciated. So thanks for that. And there's a few other people joining the chat. Hey, Maria, Pollyanna, Aquarius, thanks for joining us here. And I see Roseanne, oh, she popped into the Zoom room a second ago. So I put a link both in JC Family and on the Rumble chat for the Zoom room. So we're gonna do the presentation first, and then at the end, if there are questions and things, we're happy to get into them. And if you want to
I
actually,
I actually don't even mind if people interrupt with questions.
okay,
Let's make it a discussion,
yeah. So if you want to join
as
in,
long as it's on topic.
right. If you want to join in the presentation or ask questions as we go through it, I put the Zoom link in the chat in the Rumble and on JC Family. You're welcome to join us there. And if you have questions, just let me know and we'll find a good time to fit you in. And then if you have questions and are just in the written chat in Rumble, feel free to write them down and I'll happily relay them to Darth so that we can get those questions answered as best as we can. So yeah, without further ado, I think we'll just jump right into the presentation so we don't waste a lot of time here. And here we go. All right. So yeah, let me know if y'all have any issues with seeing or hearing anything, but here we go. So I'll just let you take it away.
All right, so they're seeing this PDF
They
here.
should be seeing that. Yeah, if you guys are not seeing the PDF, please let me know.
Okay. So I've been asked for my thoughts on Islam. The short, shallow, deceptive mainstream answer would be that Islam is a monotheistic religion that originated in Arabia in the 7th century CE. The word Islam means, when translated, submission to the will of God. This will of God, a God known as Allah, is revealed solely by the prophet named Muhammad. So that's the mainstream Google answer. And it sounds so incredibly harmless and beautiful. However, there's things are usually not what they first appear to be, and that is the case with Islam. So Islam is a religion. That means that Islam is a lesser idea, subject to and constrained by the idea, the greater idea called religion. So Islam is a subset, it's a type of religion. So now the question must be asked, what is religion? Is religion itself subject to a higher ideal? Why must these questions be asked? Why must these lengthy detours be taken? Why cannot it simply be said that this part of Islam is agreeable and this other part is not? If it is said that Islam is true or that Islam is false, how does that actually elevate the student? How does this grant the student any new vision or power or change the very nature of the student? Even if the student accepts this teacher's answer as true, is this truth or is it mere opinion? How would the student even know if he's being deceived? So I've been asked to dissect this frog called Islam and report back my findings, but that's not worth my time, for it's no benefit to the student. What will be done is to teach the student the art of dissection, and then together we'll thoroughly dissect Islam, reveal its secrets and the truth of it. Then the conclusion of the matter will not just be the teacher's opinion, but actual truth that the student can be certain of. Furthermore, the student will be changed by having new eyes and new tools that can be welded against other secrets. The student will be able to discern truth or resist the lies of any religion present or to come. An application, once the idea of religion is taken apart and put back together again in front of the student, then the student is able to apply the new understanding to Islam and ask much more specific and revealing questions about Islam or any other religion for that matter. High quality questions produce high quality answers. So this is like, like asking somebody about a car. Is this a good car? Or is that about a good car? Everyone's going to have an opinion. Everyone's going to have a preference. But if you teach the student about how cars work, then the student can go and, with that knowledge, examine the cars intelligently and then come to his own conclusion, an accurate conclusion. So that's what we're going to do with this first lesson. So we're not really going to get into Islam, probably too much at all. The first lesson. The first lesson is going to be all about taking apart the idea of religion itself. And then once we thoroughly understand that idea of religion, then what happens is that all religions become naked. See, right now, religions are hidden. They actually fall into the category of the occult because they're hidden behind the code. So when people who's not initiated, people who haven't been trained or educated, when they look at religion, they don't see the truth of it. They just see the exterior appearance. But we're gonna rip the hood off. We're gonna tear it apart, and we're gonna see religion for exactly what it is. And then after that, all religions will be exposed. The goal is actually to get to the point where you know the answer to the question even before you ask it. So this will be interesting. This should be good.
Yeah. Keep scrolling.
Any questions? No?
Nope, no questions yet.
Okay, feel free to interrupt. So what is religion? Religion is like a program that animates the mind of man, and through the man, the world around the man. Like a building or a computer program, religion is not built by accident or without skill. One must know what they are doing. If you see a building that has not lasted for very long, it is because it was well built and is being maintained. Buildings just don't appear, and the same is true of complex constructs like religions. Otherwise, they would be decomposed into freedom by nature. If you see a prison full of prisoners, do you imagine that it just arose by chance? That's obvious absurdity. A successful prison must be carefully thought out and planned. It must be well funded and supported. It would have to be manned, maintained, and modified if necessary. Prisons require administrations and bureaucracies. Furthermore, prisoners must be captured, processed, and replaced as needed. So it is with a religion. Without a deliberate intellect constructing the religious program, men would escape the program and illusions of religion and attain freedom. So that's the analogy that I'm going to give. A religion is like a prison. Um, Not all constructed ideas are negative though. So you might build a prison to enslave someone. However, you can also build a fortress to protect someone. So there's a fine line between spirituality and religion, and not all artificial constructs are evil. You know, the contractor that can build a prison can also build a palace and can also build a home. So it's many of the same ideas. A lot of it has to do with intent.
Right.
All right, so let's go through the table of contents really quick. This is what we're going to discuss today. So we have the elements of of religion. You have the programmers. These are the people that build religion or systems of faith, right? And there's two types of builders. There are people that build good places, and then there's going to be people that build bad systems. Okay. But whether they're good or bad, they both have to have a reason or motive. And that's the second part.
When I would you say that one distinct difference between these two programmers is the Christic forces, the Christic Jedi, they're going to be building systems that are continuously erasing themselves. So the system is there for a purpose for a short time, and then it dissolves. Whereas the parasitic, the Sith, they're going to be building systems that are going to be growing larger and
Correct.
stronger and more powerful and more ingrained into us.
It has to do with the nature of being as Christic or anti-Christic. See, a Christic individual is satisfied, and they practice non-attachment.
Yeah.
So they're content with what the divine has provided for them. But someone who's demonically and anti-Christically motivated, they're driven by eternal hunger. They are never satisfied. They always want more.
The parasite.
Right. So a Christic person serves, but a demonic person enslaves. And so that changes the nature of the system that they're going to be building.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the parasitic people tear apart families and they replace families. But someone who's symbiotic, divinely symbiotic, they are they are strengthening families and they're serving families and they're putting families above everything else. They're not anti-family. See, family provides everything that we need. We don't need anything outside of family. And so you're right. But there's an eternal war that's between these two people. They're struggling over control of the master program that runs all of reality. And sometimes one is stronger and sometimes the other is stronger. Most of the time, good is winning. Evil portrays the vision that things have always been hellish on earth. If you look at their school book, it's just a list of wars, all the way for as far back as we can remember. It's just a list of massacres and genocides and suffering, because that's how they define reality. That's all they can see. But the reality is the mass majority of history has been just blissful peace and serenity. And they don't get the upper hand very often. They just ran the last matrix, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the programmers and then you have their motive, their reason for operating. And and everyone's going to look at the situation and then have their own unique perspective, what it is that they want out of reality. So just because both people are good or both people are evil doesn't mean that they have the same desires or the same, or they're hungering for the same aspect of reality or the same goals. So the reasons can be varied and the desired results can be varied. And then the program, even if they have the same motive and the same desired result, the way that they implement it could be, the program that they actually run could be different. as well. There's, more than one way to skin a cat. However, um, there are some commonalities within all religions. So all of them are going to have an occult code inside the program, a spiritual experience, overt belief, defined morality or ethics. All of them have to have a sacred text. Inside the sacred text, all of them have to have the actual occult program, spiritual aspirations and motivations, a definition of good and bad, commands to follow their religion, command and authority structures, philosophical discussions that either lead or mislead, bloodline lineages. It's interesting. So both the satanic and the Christic both have bloodline lineages. So filler, defined friends and enemies, the work to be done, and then most important of all, the sacred story. So, and then you have the program. So that's the five elements of religion is you have the programmers, the motive, the method, um, the program, and then you have people that are actually programmed, the worshipers. Okay. All right. So that's the five components of religion. And we're going to look at the first one, which is the programmers. The ultimate programmer is the absolute divine goodness or that which is good. The absolute self contemplates itself and then masters and organizes itself by telling itself a story or a program. The self programs itself. The parts that are acceptable and agreeable are called good and are contained within and make up the Christ. The rejected or disagreeable parts are called bad and are antichristic in nature. The absolute self then programs everything solely through Christ, manifesting heavenly bliss on earth, while the rejected antichristic elements desperately write countercodes to keep hell from demanifesting here on earth. The Christ and Antichrist then produce other lesser human programmers in their respective family and anti-family and co-write programs through them. So the only one that's speaking here is the absolute divine self. The absolute divine self makes up everything, our concept of good and evil. They make up the programs, makes up the program and the programmers and those that are programmed. It's everything is the absolute self. But this is how the division is made. The programmers that we would call elite, archons, sophists, or builders, they see both the occult, that's the invisible cause in the spirit realm, and they see the overt, the visible effect on earth. And they understand the relationships of words and symbols between the occult and the overt within themselves and in others. The programmers hold 80 to 90% of the consciousness or awareness, while being only approximately 10% of the population. Programmers can be born or awakened spontaneously. Both good and evil programmers are hardwired into Earth, and there's no way to stop them from appearing and practicing their craft. Programmers will program and storytellers will tell stories. Without storytellers, there is no story for people to live out. So then we have the two groups of programmers or storytellers. So what I'm saying here is that it would be exceedingly difficult to eradicate religion because these structures, these societal structures arise because people are telling stories that have structure in them. And the words create reality. And the people listen to the stories and they identify with the stories and then they act them out. And while good people will tell stories that promote family, bad people are going to tell stories that replace the family. And so there's a requirement to be eternally vigilant. And we may get to a point where everyone is extremely spiritual and with very little religion, but it would be extremely difficult to eradicate it completely because it's a hardwired aspect of reality. All right, so the two groups. So you have symbiotic, angelic, Christic Jedi. So these storytellers subject themselves to the same programs they give to others, and they live among the programmed because the programmed are their family, friends, and bloodline. So I think this is important. This is an important statement here. So, so everyone has an internal code that they run by. Everyone has their own way that they see reality. But a good storyteller, a good programmer, he doesn't tell people one thing and then live by another. He's not two-faced. He subjects himself to his own standard of to the same standard of good and evil that he subjects that he requests of everyone else to live by. Okay. They care deeply for the programmed and for that which is good most of all. The stories they tell are good and result in truth. They understand their sacred responsibilities and carry them out to the best of their ability and in good faith. A true Christic programmer will not pervert or corrupt their storytelling, even on pain of death. They know that some programmers are evil and do everything in their power to protect the vision or program and the programmed and keep heavenly bliss manifesting here on earth. So there's a collective program that we're all running under. That's why we all live on the same earth. That's why we can see and interact each other because there's commonalities in the subconscious subroutines that run us. Okay. So there's a master program or a master system that God implemented to create heaven, earth, family, animals, plants, all of that. And and a good spiritual person that is going to, teach and prophesy and tell stories and, write code. He does everything he can to protect nature, protect family, protect goodness, to promote freedom. But then you have the parasitic, demonic, antichristic Sith. So these sick liars pervert the program within themselves and others, but they capture and subject others to the most painful and worst of programs. They do not care about that which is good, the program, or the programmed, because they're evil. The vision doesn't belong to them, and the programmed are not their family. They program selfishly, greedily, and compulsively without remorse or regret and are stopped only by death. They distort the vision of heaven into the illusion of hell, manifesting pain and suffering here on earth. They are the anti-family. So, we see these people, they portray themselves as good shepherds, but like inside they're just vile. And we find out they're into pedophilia, and we find out that they're stealing and embezzling funds from the church, and we find out all kinds of things, and they just don't care. They're hungry and they're liars. So it's extremely they just compulsively lie all the time. And and they're also eternally they're activists. So so you can't ever have an honest conversation with them. They're always looking for an angle to promote their agenda, and nothing is off limits. They'll go after kids, they'll go after schools, they'll go after heaven, earth, the innocent. They just don't care because they're sick. So there are many reasons. So now we're going to talk about, we talked about who, okay? It's the absolute divine casting these spells, okay? And then you have the Christ and the Antichrist, and then you have the children of the Christ and Antichrist. And these are the people creating, running reality. So what are their motives? So there are many reasons for a programmer to take action, both good and evil. Perhaps the programmed are blank, and they're doing nothing, and the programmer is curious or bored, or he's just learning the craft of storytelling. So there's frivolous storytelling, right? Often the programmer is compelled to program by divinity. So both the good and evil, sometimes the divine just wants to speak to them and they feel a compulsion to take action. However, the situation is often much more serious. Danger may be approaching in the form of environmental conditions, such as winter or famine, and the lives of both the programmer and the programmed may be at risk, or perhaps a hostile, evil, parasitic anti-family is about to attack, and the programmed must be instructed to protect themselves. So we saw this in the case of Joseph in Egypt. So there was a a religious spiritual interaction between Joseph, um, and that was the son of Israel, and the Pharaoh of Egypt, in which through divine revelation, Pharaoh and Joseph realized that that there is a famine coming. There would be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of very severe famine. And so a story was told to the populace of the land in the form of two dreams that Pharaoh had and that Joseph interpreted. And the program took, the people accepted that program. And during the 7 years of plenty, they obeyed the program and they sent massive amounts of food to be stockpiled by Joseph and Pharaoh. And then when the years of famine came, then the food was parceled back out and many lives were saved. So that's an example of a good program being written and implemented in a good institution, the stockpiling of food to survive a famine. That was a religious it was a religious institution. Okay, but it came to an end. Um, and like right now, we're seeing where society has been overrun with hostile, evil, parasitic anti-families, and these people are pedophiles, and they're just disgusting and vile, and they're embezzling all the money and overtaxation and crime and that sort of thing. But why did people allow this to happen? Because they were following a program. So now the program has to be altered to protect the people, to restore order, and it has to be done in a manner in which the programmed, the people living their lives, they have to be able to continue to function. The lights have to stay on, food has to continue to be delivered, medicines have to be continued to be produced while that's necessary. And then also people have to be put in a position where they can protect themselves, and safety has to be restored. So we're seeing that sort of programs being run right now, where where uh, people are having to be woken up to the nature of the world around them. So unfortunately, while most programmers have been selfless and virtuous, the programmers of the last matrix have abused their sacred responsibilities and the programmed, causing much damage and suffering. Now, righteous programmers are courageously combating bad programs or religions, while at the same time rescuing as many programmed as possible.
Cute.
Q. Yep. Yeah. That's what that is. Okay, so the desired result. We're moving through this pretty quick. You don't have any questions? No?
Nope, no
Nothing?
questions. Yeah, feel free to relay any if you have any.
Okay. So everything that exists is within the program. Program, when I say the program, I mean just reality, right? Reality is a program. This includes every aspect of human existence, from as small as the proper way to hold a fork to as grand as legalism and the alleged separation between church and state. Even science is a religious program. It even includes non-human entities such as the earth, plants, animals, space, and time, and the way God is perceived. The only limitation are the programmer's accumulated self-control and his knowledge of language. Programmers perform the most massive great resets, reinventing man, They raise armies and wage wars, build nation states, but also end civilizations. Many truly divine programmers practice their craft solely on themselves in desperate situations, overcoming terrible demons, obstacles, and monsters to protect their family. Others use coded language to protect marriage or raise and keep their children on the Christic way. So if you can speak, you're a programmer. If you can tell a story, you're casting a spell. Some of us are better at speaking. Some of us are better at telling stories. Telling a story from scratch, creating a story from scratch is not easy. Not all of us are good at it, but all of us do it to some level or another. And when we tell these stories, even if it's just inside of our head, even if it's just a short story like, oh, I'm useless, or yes, I can do this. Okay, that's a story you're telling yourself. Um, that's exerting spiritual force within you and through you to the external world, and that changes things. It affects the people around you, affects the inanimate objects around you. All great leaders, small and large, and whatever arena they lead in, whether that be family, business, spiritual, political, or military, must be good programmers, also known as spiritual people. Many master programmers are completely unknown by the masses they program. And that's been the case for the last while. The masses have been manipulated by unknown people, and the faces that we see on television are not the programmers. They're the puppets. All right, so let's go into the actual program or religion itself. So there are multiple components of the program. So you have the occult code inside the program. You have the spiritual experience produced by it. You have the overt belief, the defined morality or ethics, the sacred texts, and then the sacred story. All right, so let's go to part A. The occult code inside the program. The code is comprised of repetitive rituals with varying degrees of seriousness. Placing the fork on the left side of the plate is a religious ritual, but so is the more serious baptism. Making the bed before breakfast is also a religious ritual for running a tidy home and having a productive day. Making your bed is literally a spiritual or occult action that produces an overt or material result of having the day go smoother. These overt, complex rituals and ceremonies often consist of a series of intense words, music, and actions with hidden occult meanings that captures and enslaves and animates the minds and hearts of the participants. Occult rituals are repeated to renew and strengthen the program. The occult ritual defines the spirit to be conjured, creates the sacred space, summons the entity, and binds the possessed to the possessor. Often there is a sacrifice of some sort to create spiritual debt and induce the flow of life energy. The ritual may involve simulated or actual death or sex. If the spirit to be induced is evil, then there must be trauma involved. The greater the trauma, the greater the evil. However, exhaustion can break the program. Looshing is a delicate balance.
So by that you mean, I mean, you could look at it just from the sake of like torturing somebody. You know, you can only get so much out of torture. So trauma, that's what you're saying here with the greater exhaustion can break the program. So
Yeah,
they
sometimes,
can't do too much too fast.
right. Sometimes when they're trying to induce a binding, some people don't survive the ritual,
Hmm,
and then they have to try again with someone new.
right.
But this also involves, like, say, religion. So let's say someone's stuck in a religion, and the religion is extracting life force from them. Eventually, the person can become exhausted, and then they kind of wake up, they get to the end, and then on the precipice, they look around and they say, well, this is crazy. And they exit the religion. So religions have, they have to form a delicate balance. How much energy are they going to take from people? How much money are they going to take from, how many of the children are going to get molested? They have to like be careful about how greedy they get.
And even on the other side, when it's not evil, there still has to be a delicate balance in how much
Oh, sure.
overt programming is done and how much people can handle um, at any given time. You know,
Also, there's a compatibility issue.
yeah,
Um,
you gotta know your audience.
you got to know your audience. And sometimes when people wake up and realize a religion that they're in is false, the experience can make them sick.
So Will Live asked, if religious programming is difficult or impossible to reverse, will the programming in society be impossible to reverse also, or will it just take a long time?
I don't think it said it's impossible to reverse. It's difficult to reverse. It has to be the reversal process is also difficult because
Yeah, we see examples within the Q plan. I mean, that's why it's been so meticulous and has taken so long, decades, if not longer, of planning to get everything together. And um, so it makes sense that I mean, and that's essentially what they're doing. They're deprogramming from centuries, if not millennia, of programming from those creating these evil religions and all of that. So makes sense that it would take a long it would take a very uh detailed approach in order to do that.
you have to be cautious because when someone escapes from a religion, um, you have to give them something to escape to. And if you don't, it can make the person physically sick, even if they have something that they're escaping to another system of thought, another system of belief. The person can experience just spontaneous dizzy spells, throwing up, nosebleeds. There's been people that when they suddenly wake up and they realize that they spent their entire life serving a cult. Some of them die. They just drop. They can't handle it.
Yeah, or
So, or
kill
kill
themselves.
themselves. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, goodness, can you imagine decades and all the personal sacrifices and everything you gave up, and then for what?
Yeah,
All that you go through all kinds of stages of rage and desperation and sadness and grieving. And then you have to learn how to operate in the new world because everything looks different.
right. The ending is not for everyone, as Q says, because not everyone's going to make it through this because of how difficult it is to transition that. And that's why everything has been so careful to make sure that we get as many able to transition as possible.
It's kind of like let's say that you're married for a really long time and you think you're mutually in love. The world, you look at yourself one way, you look at your spouse one way, you look at the world one way. And it seems like it's pretty solid because you're mutually in love and it's a sure thing. And then what happens if you find out that your spouse has been cheating on you? And then what if you find out that you know the person they've been cheating with and that other people know and you're the last to know? How many people have gone through that experience? The whole world comes crumbling down.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, you don't know who your spouse was. How long has it been going on? They're not who I thought they were. My best friend wasn't who I thought he was. All these people knew they're not who I thought they were. I'm not who I thought I was. Like the whole world just comes crumbling down. And all of a sudden, you woke up one day in heaven and you wake up the next day in hell. It's the same place, but it's not the same place. It's completely different. So this is what happens when you're trying to rescue people out of these occult programs. It's an occult process. The occult just simply means hidden or unmanifested. Um, and I don't fault religions for having occult origins because everything has occult origins. There's no other origin than the unmanifested or the hidden.
Yeah. LJ Anderson said, so true. This happened to me after leaving the Mormon church, wound up in the hospital, but I
Yeah.
fought my way back from the ground up, figuring out what I believe.
Kudos to you, man.
Yeah, seriously.
It's
I think that's Lisa. I think that's the
Lisa.
woman. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing. And just on that
Did she
top,
have to do it by herself?
yeah, I'm curious, did you do it alone or did you have a partner or family to go through that with? It would be intense. And it just on that topic, it's kind of like what we talk about with in regards to initiation practices to higher spiritual orders, like things like plant medicine or going
Hmm.
through deprivation chambers like the Great Pyramids and whatnot. If one is not ready for that, it can be quite dangerous for the practitioner for taking a substance like that gets them out of one level that they're not ready to, or going into a deprivation chamber and their body's just not ready for that level of spiritual movement. So
All right.
it is something that has to be taken in stride.
Oh,
She
wow.
said all,
All alone.
yeah, wow. I mean,
Incredible, incredible bravery.
truly, yeah. I mean, that's how powerful you are. Like God is really, you've yeah, you've got big things you're here for. And I'd say a big part of that is to help others breaking free from these programs, and that's what all of us are are being groomed by God to do, is to help those um, breaking free from that intense programming. So thank you for stepping out and thank you for sharing.
Okay, so the next component of religion is the spiritual experience. So these intense rituals are correctly perceived as spiritual experiences, which grants validation and authenticity to the entire program. The intense emotions produced are then strong enough to make internal occult changes to the programmed, changing what they see in the external overt and how they behave. So in any initiation experience, you have to have intense emotions because you have to override what the conscious mind. See, the conscious mind is not going to want to change. And in order to change, you need an intense sensation. And most people don't have, while they're living out their mundane lives, most people don't have spontaneous spiritual experiences. If you have another access point for having a spiritual experience, then what happens is that if if someone if an occult or another religion, they try to give you a spiritual experience, if you have other methodologies for achieving that, then that kind of disarms them. But if you're someone that's never had a spiritual experience and then a non-familial institution gives you a spiritual experience, then that's it, you're hooked.
Yeah, so Jill is saying, she said, this happened in my marriage and I felt so dumb. Then you question everything everyone at his work knew, and I attended many parties with my children. I think she meant to say Christian parties, cruel. So I don't want to assume, are you saying that you discovered he was cheating on you, or something else in regards to the relationship? Either way, to break free, to realize something.
Says everyone at his work knew, and he had been to party. She'd been to work parties with her children. How cool. Yeah, that would be,
Yeah, with someone at work.
wow,
Wow. Yeah,
that's
that's
rough.
that's that's really rough. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, so she understands that the world changed on her.
Yeah, everything changes in that moment.
Yeah. Okay, so you have to have the ritual, and the ritual has to produce a spiritual experience. Okay. And this will change uh what the what the worshiper believes. Okay, so the next component of religion is you have to have an overt belief. Overt belief is the vision produced by the occult programming that the programmed see. When you ask a religious person what they believe, they don't tell you the code, they tell you what the code makes them see. A skilled programmer can produce a vision or worldview that is so stable and subtle that the programmed will never even know that they have been programmed, that the world around them is mere appearance, and they will execute the prescribed commands precisely and effectively. So that's most of the people that we meet around us. Um, they are participating in occult rituals every day. If you use money, money is an occult ritual. That's why it has an occult symbols on it, right? Every day people are handling money. Okay. Every day people are getting dressed a certain way, walking a certain way, talking a certain way. All of that is occult rituals that is producing a very specific world. And 99% of the people don't realize that the world around them isn't actually there. What's real is the experience. So we're seeing a vision, or some people are seeing an illusion, and it's just a vision or illusion. It's not actually there, but the experience is real.
Mhm.
That's why the divine did it, for the experience. And then so most people, because they can't see the code, they just follow it. And that's the secret to breaking free, is you learn to see it. And that gives you a choice. If you can't see it, you can't choose. If you're blind to it, you can't choose. But once you can see it, then you're like, oh, I can see it now. Now I can choose. You see the trick.
Right. And it says a skilled programmer can produce a vision or worldview that's so stable and subtle that the program will never even know they've been programmed.
I'm talking about God there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a programmer that can produce like a massive world religion like Christianity, more modern Western Christianity,
Yeah.
or Islam,
Or a great story that
or a great story. Yeah.
gets you so immersed into it, a book that you lose yourself, or a movie that, or a game or whatever. All of these are ways to,
Have you ever gone to the theater and you get so wrapped up in the movie, you forget that you're at the theater? And the movie ends, and like, oh, that's right, I'm at a theater.
well, yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good storyteller, a good programmer.
Yeah. But funny story. So I took my wife to see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and it's a Oriental movie, in which it's just it's theater, right? So it's completely unrealistic. So the guys are floating through the air because they're being held up on wires,
Mhm.
And I'm really into martial arts. I'm really into Chinese, Japanese movies. This was my thing, right? And it was the first time I took my wife to a movie, and the whole time she's like, "That looks fake. I don't believe that." That's retarded. She kept like breaking the illusion. And just when I'd get into it, she would say something. Eventually someone behind us like started yelling at us. But so, but that's what we need is when the people around us are are following the program and they don't see it and they're just going along with it. We got to speak up.
Yeah.
Like the whole meme wars. That's what the whole
Yeah.
our meme cannons, where we were all sharing memes during COVID-19, and showing the ridiculousness of it. We were waking them up in the middle of the movie, but you have to be careful. So the way that guy behind me got all pissed and angry, there are people that when you wake them up and you say, hey, this is fake, and this thing that you think is real isn't really real, some of them get angry, like the woman in the watch party where she wanted to forget
Hmm.
and then she remembered,
Hmm.
and she and the heroine thought she was rescuing her. She's like, I wanted to forget. So some people, but it's hard to forget once you're awake.
Right.
How do you go back to sleep?
Right. Yeah. That's what Q had been training all of us to do, is to be that voice in the theater to say, hey, this is fake, this is
Yeah.
bullshit, this is like, why are you believing this? And when that happens and when that takes hold and there's no room for the Sith programmers to insert, or they have to become more devious, but it becomes less and less feasible for them to insert programs unaware, without people being aware of it. And then when we are aware, then the only program that we want to go with is the good one.
So that's kind of like what's happening now is that there's all of these institutions that people were worshiping and thought was good, various aspects of government. And now, the curtain is being pulled back so people can see the USAID. Where is that money going? What is it doing? Who's sending it?
Hmm.
Did we give permission for this to happen? Did we even know this was happening?
Right.
And now various institutions, people are losing faith in the various institutions. And when all the institution comes down, what's left? What's true? Well, family. Family is true. And we're all under the family of Christ. Well, except for those of us that aren't. So,
Well, they just forgot.
and we have to learn how to identify each other.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Cheryl said, I left a number of churches always in seeking truth, ostracized every time, three different denomination. Thankful that God gave me strong faith.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next element of religion is defined morality or ethics. That which is good cannot be defined or contained, but it is that which defines and contains all. No definition of the good can actually equal the good. Therefore, any definition of the good is inherently lesser and bad, no matter how well written or with what intention. Bro, is to that, do I need to repeat that? That's kind of like
Mm,
a word twister.
yeah. I mean, it's like you get into that a lot in the presentation, Q-based metaphysics. If people want to go deeper into definitions and the slippery slope to hell that they can create. Um, but essentially, uh, God cannot be contained. So if we try and contain it, then we're trying to put God in a box. We're trying to put ourselves in a box. We're trying to put consciousness in a box. And
It's basically it's idolatry.
yeah,
So you can't make God. Reality isn't big enough to actually make God. So anything that we make and then say is God, it's automatically lesser than and not as good as.
yeah, yeah. Will Live says, yes, we tried to wake up some people we knew. It didn't work out too well. We don't hear from them anymore. They are stuck in the program.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. And the key to that is that like just continuing to allow the energy to move us. And if people flow in and out of our lives, then that it's not wise to try and fight somebody who's attached to the program. If they want to be, then we give them the opportunity to see out of it, and then we move on if they don't take it. But yeah, it's a tough reality walking the straight and narrow for sure.
Programmers can hear the voice of the absolute whispering inside them through either the Christ or the Antichrist, and they choose who will speak and program through them. They also let that which is good define what is good and bad in all matters. And so they don't need anyone else to define this for them. The programmable, however, do not have the necessary level of self-awareness to hear divinity clearly. This is what makes them programmable.
And that's the to step in as a programmer. I mean, that's what Christ is always beckoning us to do, to follow that path, to step out of the programmable idea where you're letting everything in the external define your reality, and you move back to that internal guidance, and therefore you're not programmable any longer. And that's that activation, that's that
Right.
sovereignty.
It's the difference between seeing the temple within or thinking that the temple is a physical temple at a specific location.
Right. Yep.
You know, Since the programmable cannot hear the good strongly, they have a weak internal definition of good and bad, and they'll follow whatever definition is provided by the program, even to extremes. Bad programs inhibit hearing the good and provide false definitions, tricking the programmed into bad acts. Ethics and morality also define totality and boundaries of the religion or program. So that voice inside of us that tells us something is good or something is bad, your conscience. It's like the rudder of a ship. And if you have a good divinely inspired rudder, then the waves and the wind of society and other people's efforts, it's not going to be able to blow you off course. You'll be able to correct and keep heading toward that which is good. But if the people inside them don't know they have that rudder, then they're easily swayed.
Mhm. It's like, are you building your foundation on the solid rock or on the
Right.
sand?
Now, those that are actually conscious and can decide how to use their speech, they're not just repeating or parroting. They act as the rudder of society. And it's whoever is the most intolerant is who will take control of the master program. So evil is very intolerant of good. And all that is required for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing, right? So when good people lose control of the program or they consent or they yield to that which is evil, then the their consciousness takes control of the whole society and they start to corrupt every aspect of human civilization and then they blow it up, right? But when we're intolerant toward that which is evil and we're insistent on that which is good and we make sure that we're the louder voice and we're the more persistent, then we act as the rudder of society. We don't let stories be told like they're having this you know tranny story hour for children at the library. That's an occult initiation ritual to get the children while they're vulnerable.
Hmm.
And if we let them do that in one generation, they'll take over the
Hmm.
whole. So we're always one generation away from the precipice, really. Okay, so the next component of religion is the sacred text. And every major religion has a sacred text. So the primary purpose of the sacred text is to lock the religion or program so that it can't be altered except by the designated controllers. This is done by saying that the sacred scripture is inspired, perfect, and complete, and not to be altered under the threat of severe divine punishment. The well-written sacred text may contain a variety of various elements depending on the skill of the builder and the depth and range of the religion. Every permanent aspect of the religion must be in the sacred text. Some religions have a sacred text for the controlled public class and a second secret sacred text or oral tradition for the initiated controller class. Some religions have multiple layered sacred texts or even a fake public sacred text. The elements, and then we have all the elements. So that's interesting. So like for example, modern Western Judaism has two sacred texts. They have the Torah, the first five books of the Bible. And so whenever anyone asks, well, what do modern Jews believe? Everyone thinks, oh, you just go to the first five books of the Bible, and that's what Jews believe. But then they have a second collection of books, interpretations of the first five, and that's what they actually live by, right? So that's kind of like that's hidden, right? That's not immediately obvious. Okay. And then like Jehovah's Witnesses, everyone thinks that they live by the Bible, but then their elders have a second secret book that runs every aspect of the organization. And if you're a publisher, guess what? You're not allowed to have that book. You're not allowed to see it. If you're an elder and you come home, you can't let your wife read it. You can't let your kids read it. If the public wants to see it, oh no, that's for elders only. Well, hold on. I thought you lived your life by just the Bible. Why is there a second book? So, but the sacred text has to control, has to be there in order to have a stable religion. Otherwise, you're just playing the telephone game and the religion is destabilized. Now, Islam, they have their sacred text. However, Muhammad died before he could formalize the authority structure in the religion. So it was just him. Everything was him. He decided everything, and no one else got to decide anything. It was just him and Allah, right? And then and then he died, and then they were like, "Well, who's in charge now?" And there was kind of a dispute over who's going to run this thing now. Some people said, "Well, it should be the closest family member that should run Islam." And then, the other people were like, "Well, maybe we should vote on this because this guy ain't so competent," right? So there was a dispute, and they couldn't go to the Quran because he forgot to say so, which, note to self, if you're going to start a religion, make sure you write instructions on what to do after you die, right? And yet, look, even without that, look at how well and how long Islam has lasted and the wars that have been waged and the massive amount of spiritual force that has been exerted. And that's with no clear instructions on who's in charge.
Hmm.
But on the other way, you can say, well, that's how good of a program it was, is that it got locked and now no one can change it
Right.
because there's no authority class. So like with Jehovah's Witnesses, they interpret the Bible to say, well, there's a governing body and the governing body gets to introduce new light, right? So modern Jehovah's Witnesses don't have to believe what ancient Christians believed because they have a governing body that's allowed to reinterpret what truth is, right? Um, but Muslims don't have that. They don't get to reinterpret what the Quran says. If the Quran says you're allowed to kick puppies, it doesn't, but it says if you're allowed to kick puppies, well, now that's just absolute truth. Nobody can change it. And that has actually been one of the primary strengths of Islam is that you're stuck with it. There's no, there's one or two main, parties of how they interpret it, but it's not like Christianity where you've got dozens of denominations and they're all Christian and they all have a different interpretation of the scriptures. No, with Islam, you've got like two and one tiny one because you're not allowed to change it. That's the power of the sacred text.
Hmm. Cheryl asks, so would Second Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, all scripture is inspired by God and is useful for instruction, profitable for doctrine, reproof for correction and training in righteousness. Was this inserted or interpreted incorrectly?
It was inserted by the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
So if you look at the scriptures, what Jesus taught and what the Apostle Paul taught were two like totally different things. Jesus Christ was heading one direction, and then the Apostle Paul, for a while he tried to stamp out Christianity. Then he realized he couldn't do it. And then he said, "Oh yeah, I'm Christian. I just met Jesus. No one else could see it, but I saw it." And then he got all these divine revelations, and then he kind of grabbed Christianity by the nose and made a left turn. And then he was the one that wrote Second Timothy. All scripture is inspired of God and beneficial for teaching, for proving, for setting matters straight, that the man of God may be completely competent and equipped for every good work. And that locks what the Apostle Paul taught. And now nobody can change that.
And people worship the Bible instead of and and the definition that it provides instead of the
Right. So,
goodness.
so instead of setting up the instead of going back to family, divine Christic family, which is what Jesus Christ taught, all of a sudden you get this modern Western church, which is what the Apostle Paul taught. It's so yeah, so it was inserted.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, Aaron, I just watched a great presentation by Aaron today. I put it on uh my other channel through the eye of JC. Great presentation, and yeah, he does a lot of great work in dissecting the distortions of Paul and how that took modern Christianity away from the teachings of Jesus and into this dogmatic perspective. And well, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but it's likely when the Catholic Church realized that the distortions of Paul didn't work well enough or as well as they wanted, then that's when they came up with the plan to create Muhammad and this other religion where they could kind of get ahead of it before, um, yeah, before it got too far away from their control. Um, but yeah, it's interesting for sure.
It's interesting that the Apostle Paul put himself through an occult ritual to initiate himself into Christianity, and then he was accepted by a large portion of the Christian congregation, in which he lost his sight and it had to be restored by another Christian in order to validate his identity as one. So that happened on the road to Damascus.
Hmm.
Okay, so they are elements in the sacred text, and they are as follows. You have to have the actual occult program so that people can perform the rituals in order to have the uh, the spiritual experience. But usually, the occult program is in symbolized code, so that the programmed they can't see or understand it. If they read it, it's just the ritual to them. They don't understand the meaning of it. These are seen as directions on which rituals to perform and how and when. The second thing in the text is spiritual aspirations and motivations. Uh, this makes the worshiper want to follow the program. Okay, so these are like, oh, heaven is so great. It's always not where you are right now. It's always someplace else, and it's always in the future. But it's the carrot to keep people moving. And then you also have to add a drop of truth, because if the religion is completely 100% impractical and it's 100% painful, then nobody's going to do it. You got to throw in some pleasure. You got to throw in some measure of wisdom so that when the idiot comes off the street, you have something to actually teach him that he didn't know and that's going
Hmm.
to like actually make his life better.
Hmm.
It's the love bombing stage.
Hmm.
As brought up before, you need a definition of good and bad. Um, you have laws and punishment for violating the laws. You have to have a command to actually follow their religion, a program and the rewards for doing so. So the commands. So could you imagine if you go through all the effort of writing a computer program and you never hit execute, you never hit run. So without the actual command to do this, people won't do it. It's just the way people's minds work. You need philosophical discussions that either lead or mislead. So the ritual captures the heart, but the philosophy captures the mind. For example, bad experiences or illnesses might be attributed to karma because you didn't follow the religion, right? Or giving attention to physical and emotional needs might be labeled as self-cherishing or promoting ego. These explanations can be gently challenged by introducing other ideas as possibilities. So So Jehovah's Witnesses do this. I'm using Jehovah's Witnesses a lot because that's a lot of my family. So Jehovah's Witnesses do this a lot where whenever something bad happens, it's Satan persecuting the congregation. But whenever anything good happens, it's clearly God's blessing. And on the surface, that makes sense. I mean, it's completely retarded. But on the surface, if you're in the program, it appears to be true. And that's a philosophical viewpoint. Um, is someone saying something?
No.
No? Okay, so the next element that's necessary in the sacred text is you have to have bloodline lineages. This creates an us versus them mentality and special identities that make the program feel special. It creates division. So Whenever you have bloodline lineages, you're always saying someone is special. You're special. And that's one of the ways to identify a false religion because we're all God's children. None of us are the chosen. We're all God's children. Even the not so good people, they're also God's children. They just don't recognize it. They might be 1% God's child, but they're still God's child.
Yeah, that's another telltale sign of to distinguish between the Christic and this and the anti-Christic is the anti-Christic is always going to embellish and augment separation, whereas the Christic is going
Bring people together.
to acknowledge harmony and connection. Yeah,
Yeah. Then you've got your filler. Your filler obscures intentions and functionalities and provides bulk to the document.
and makes it seem fancier and more
Legitimate.
powerful, and
Yeah.
it's a big book, and look
Yeah.
how daunting it is, and oh, I've
Right.
studied this whole thing,
Yeah.
so therefore I'm more intelligent than you, and therefore I know more,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
You have to define friends and enemies. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's especially if you're creating a religion as a weapon. You have to do the work to be done. And that's really the point of it. Sooner or later, somewhere in the document, there is work to be done. Build the pyramid, build the temple, knock on doors, right? So, because remember, the religion doesn't have no purpose. Remember, there is an environmental situation, and the person that creates the religion is responding to the environmental situation. Maybe they need to wage a war, right? Or maybe maybe they're actually trying to help people. Okay, they need to prepare for a famine. We use that example. Maybe they're trying to set up a pedophile network or whatever, but there is work to be done. And somewhere in the sacred document, the work has to be listed. And then the last thing that I listed that has to be in the sacred document, and is one of the most important components of a religion, is what's called the sacred story. So inside the sacred text is the sacred story. The sacred story is extremely important to every religion and just may be the most vital part of the entire religion or program. Without a good quality sacred story, no religion can survive and will fall apart. When empowered and validated by the religious experience, the story ties together multiple crucial points of the religion. The incantation and conjuring of the summoned spirit will not work without a proper sacred story. Life force cannot be transferred, and the spiritual bindings or contracts cannot be forged without an effective story. The God of the religion, the focal point, must be realized and made real in the mind of the reader by the story. Unlikely or unrelatable images of God cannot be realized and related to, and therefore cannot be interacted with. Without interaction, there is no energy transfer and no work is done. The program does not run and the religion fails. The story creates the special identity of the God of the religion, the followers and the controllers of the organization, as well as the enemies or work of the religion. Myths, epics, or fables about gods, religious figures, heroes, villains, victories, and defeats, they rouse emotions such as desire, jealousy, fear, and anger, and are identified with by the programmed. The programmed start to see themselves as the character and mimic and act out the sacred story, performing the work the programmer wanted done. Having multiple characters allow targeted programming for specific types of individual or classes of individuals. We see this. We see this in Hollywood. So Hollywood before when the CIA was running it, they they used it as a tool against society. Children were disrespectful to parents. Wives were disrespectful to husbands. Husbands were abusive to wives, right? Men were abandoning children. You know, the young fighting age male was going after the gangster lifestyle. Remember, everyone in the 80s was trying to rap. Why did that happen? Because Hollywood was used to portray a story. People watched the stories and then they tried to act them out. It's just the way humans work. Stories and allegories explain the universe's working, such as time and space, and what is possible or impossible. That's important. So, a lot of these religious stories portray evil as being impossible to defeat. They always portray the arrival of Christ as sometime in the future, right?
Hmm.
This keeps worshipers from realizing that they're in a simulation and escaping, as well as explaining why various tribulations self-inflicted by the religion are inevitable. Historical style writings that changed the envisioned past and the expected future. This changes the way the eternal present is seen and keeps the programmed on task. This is how you aim a person. The whole of the story creates a deep compulsion to adopt and identify with the new program. And then the program takes away the choice. That's how the story works.
Hmm.
This has got to be like bringing back like memories for the lady that was in the Mormon.
Hmm. I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly all of us can relate with some layer of this programming. But yeah, the deeper religious ones are the worst for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about the programmed. Remember, the absolute self and source has told itself a story, programmed itself to believe the vision that they are things and people separate from and other than itself. God invented the system of rhetoric that is occult to overt symbolized language, and then used rhetoric to put himself through the first occult ritual to create and conjure new spirit entities. First, the favored Christ, and by necessity, the rejected Antichrist, and lastly, through Christ, all things. The point is, we are only here inside this program, seeing ourselves as human, unable to see that we are God because of a religious occult ritual that we, as God outside the program, are running on ourselves. And if we, as God outside the program, ever stopped performing that ritual, then everything, all of reality, the whole universe would collapse totally, and we would wake from this vision, this dream and program to see that we are God, perfect and complete, and that none of this was real.
Yeah, it's that's why I like to joke about it and say we decided to beat ourselves across the head and throw ourselves into an experience where we forgot who we were, also that we could go through the process of remembering again, and
Yeah,
but we can't, well, if we lost that experience of forgetfulness entirely, then this experience would cease to
yeah.
exist.
There'd be no flowers, no ocean, no cute, cuddly animals,
No me or
no
you.
beautiful oceans, no sunrises, no friendship, no betrayal, no revenge. All the delicious things we like to take enjoy.
Hmm.
None of that would exist. And it all exists because God forgot who he was, which is why we forget who we are whenever we die and then we go through the portal and pop up back here in this reality
Hmm.
and we don't remember, we forgot. It's because forgetting is necessary to accept the program so that all of this can exist.
Right.
So we are all programmable and already programmed to some degree, or we couldn't even be here. We wouldn't even be able to see this reality, touch, or be touched by it. However, some of us are more programmable, more vulnerable than others. Self awareness, that is the ability to see inspect, accept, and then lock an aspect of ourselves, or we're going to see, inspect, and then we're going to reject, overcome, and modify our own programming. It's what allows us to protect ourselves from outside programming. So we have a choice to look inside of ourselves. Some of us have the ability to do that, some of us don't. This ability is called spirituality. A spiritual person is aware of themselves and the connection to the absolute self that is within all. They measure themselves against the absolute self within to keep themselves, their personal program, pure and stable. But a less spiritual person is not nearly as aware of themselves or the presence of the absolute self within. Lacking a clear and stable connection to the divine self, they tend not to think for themselves, and they're at the mercy of outside programmers. This type of people make up 80 to 90% of the population, and yet they only possess 10 to 20% of the total amount of awareness. So most of the people that we meet are they're barely conscious. They're walking around with like a tenth of 1% of consciousness. But if you can actually hear the divine inside of yourself, you're walking around with like hundreds of units of consciousness. It's a massive, massive chasm. And it's why, it's why if you are self-aware and you are conscious and you have that internal dialogue with the divine and you have the ability to control your speech, it's why it's so important that you actually do so. It's why it's so important that you actually be the absolute best person that you can be, because you're one of the 10% and you're going to have a massive effect on the other 90%.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Right. Right. And these people are so vulnerable because they'll just accept whatever program that comes across their desk.
Hmm.
They'll kill themselves, they'll kill their neighbor, they'll abort their babies, they'll treat themselves abusively, they'll go into alcoholism, they'll slave and for corporations, they'll walk around in terror and fear and manifest hell, all because someone didn't control their mouth.
Hmm.
It's why it's so important that we speak, that we treat others with respect and kindness and dignity, and that we control our speech, because we're a massive force simply by virtue of the fact that we're awake
Yeah.
and that we can control our speech. They just parrot.
And that's a big, uh, it's good to remember that when you step in as a sovereign programmer, or you step away from being programmable as much, um, there's always the temptation to fall into either apathy or disdain towards the masses for their ignorance,
Or
for
their
their
plight.
ineptitude. And it's something to be aware of, where that violet chakra, raising to that highest, becomes violent if we lose our connection with the green center, which is connecting us to both the red and the blue, connecting us to both the sleepy masses and those who are ascending past it, so that we don't lose our love and compassion for them. Because if we do lose that love and compassion, we can easily turn into that Sith. We can easily turn into that antichristic and allow that antichristic energy to consume us. Because then all of a sudden we hate the masses, we hate the other people, we hate everything about them. And so then it leaves the only other option, or the obvious option, which is to then control them, to
Yeah.
dominate them and subjugate them. So it's important to remember that, that everything is rooted in that compassion within that connection. Not that we're better than or any different, but just to recognize the role that we've been given in this moment, which is to step into that righteous responsibility and take it seriously.
So the entire world right now is being initiated into a new reality. There's a great reset that's going on right now. There was going to be a great reset into an even worse state or condition, but that's been hijacked, and now it's a great reset into a better condition. But think of what's been happening. So so you have people, the vast majority of people believed the mainstream media, the legacy media, right? And then how many times did Donald Trump say fake news,
Hmm.
right? Fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news, fake news. You're fake news. You're fake news. You're especially fake news, right?
Hmm.
And then look at the pain and sacrifice that everyone had to go through for the last 4 years, and the precipice that everyone was forced to face, and what went on. And now we're through that initiation ritual, and now we're being initiated into a new time. So it's a single person that's exerting massive force on the 80%, because the 80%, if he hadn't shown up, the 80% would have ended up in FEMA camps, right? America would have fallen. Like, these people would not have rescued themselves. Someone needed to come and be persistent and perform the rituals and do the dance in order for the world to be, in order for their consciousness to wake up. And now things that you couldn't say before, you can say now, because someone exercised their speech to right the ship.
Hmm.
So righteous Christic programmers do their best to write serene and peaceful programs to protect the program and create tranquil pro-family environments that encourage the programmed to hear and follow the inner Christ, the absolute divine self within. But vicious anti-Christic programmers create hostile, fearful, warlike hellscapes that destroy families and drown out the divine source within. They create anti-family replacement institutions to mislead away and consume the innocent. Anyone can become vulnerable to being hacked, but there are times, states, and conditions when we especially need to be on guard. The greatest threats are pride and fear. A proud or fearful person is already compromised and delusional, or they wouldn't already be proud or fearful. So the second you become overly proud, well, now you're just delusional, right? It's not realistic. The two ideas are closely associated. Pride often being the cover emotion for fear. When we detect ourselves becoming overly prideful, it's important to take time as soon as possible and inspect ourselves for the defect we are fearful over and correct it. It usually involves overattachment and fear of loss.
Yeah. That's why I often say humility is key. So when we find ourselves in that, and we're receiving the signals from our surroundings or from our intuition or whatever, that's when we come back into that humbling, hummus grounding space where we can dispel that energy and come back to that connection. So yeah, pride before the fall. Like it's very, very much the thing that causes us to start slipping into hell is that pride.
Right. And so a lot of times, if a bad programmer wants to crack your password, right? He wants to get in your head and your heart and corrupt you. Often, what he'll do is, see, we're already naturally ascended, okay? But our ascendancy depends on our submission to the divine voice, right? But what an evil person will do is he'll start to build you up outside of your connection to the divine. And the reason why he does that is because then that feels good. And and if it's something he built you up, then it's something he can take away from you. And then you're dependent on it. And then because you've become dependent on this false ascension, then you become fearful, right? So that fear and that pride are very closely associated. And then in order to keep the false ascension, you'll allow yourself to become compromised, and then you let him in, and then he's got you. And then he can take your energy and he can make you do work,
Right.
right?
We become attached to the identity, the
Right.
egoic construct. And so that's why Jesus talked about, the death. We have to be willing to die. We have to go through that death and resurrection. Uh, so that we don't allow these identities to be
Right,
formed and create. I mean, there's nothing wrong with identity. There's nothing wrong with having a character and characteristics, and but when you are attached to it, that's the problem.
right.
So it's like having the fun and enjoyment of this experience and the fact that we are God who's convinced ourselves that we're not God, to have this whole play and have this fun experience to be a part of. But don't let that separation, this identity, consume you to the point to where you're willing to abandon the fact that this is all ultimately,
Some
illusion. This is all, not illusion as in somebody is deceiving us, but we are,
it's
it's
a vision.
purposeful. It's a vision. It's purposeful.
It's the vision of love,
Yeah.
of all the various manifestation aspects and attributes of love. It's a vision of that. And the love is real. So the vision is real and the experience is real. Sometimes also we'll become overly attached to some gift that love has provided for us. But things that things that have a beginning always have an end.
Hmm.
And there's other good things that love will give us. But sometimes we get over attached to a certain gift that we've received because we forget that our life doesn't originate from the gift. It originates from love. And love is the only thing, absolute divine love is the only thing that's eternal, which is why we don't, because he has no beginning, he has no end. And that's why he's the only stable thing that we should stand on.
Right. And that's you.
And that's us. Yeah, that's the you within us.
Yeah. The only thing that you can't truly see
Right.
beyond observation, but it's permeates everything. Yeah.
Religions often target people who are looking to escape something or who are vulnerable, and they use a variety of methods to recruit and retain members, including violence, intimidation, coercion, and indoctrination. So then there's some vulnerabilities that are listed. So the first one is that you might be born into it. People who are born into institutions may not realize that they are being programmed until properly stimulated. Emotional vulnerability. People who are struggling with mental health issues, abuse, or loss may be more susceptible to religion or to accepting some new program, right?
Hmm.
Unresolved insecurities. People who are looking for acceptance, belonging, or meaning may be more susceptible to religion. So because they're not secure in their connection to the divine, they're looking for some other thing to be secure in. And so they'll accept an institution or they'll accept another group of people. Transitional periods. Young adults who are searching for their identity may be more susceptible to religion. Social economic conditions. People who are facing intolerable social economic conditions may be more susceptible to religion. Family support or the lack of. People who have weak or non-existent family support may be more susceptible to religion. That's also a reason to stay in. So sometimes someone might be in a religion and they realize that it's false, but their entire family's in that religion, and they have to risk losing all of that in order to get out. And so they stay in.
Right.
Life events. People who are going through a difficult life event, such as death, divorce, career setback, may be more susceptible to religion. So these are all things that we go through. Just because we're awake doesn't mean that we might not, go through the death of a cherished family member or lose a job or, go through some sort of transition. So at that time, when we're moving from point A to point B, we have to be careful that we're not captured. We have to make sure that the entire time we're staying rooted in our connection, our internal connection to the divine.
Hmm.
Don't let anyone hijack that process. Others, out of spiritual hunger, go looking They go looking for it to get programmed by a religion, and they don't realize who they are, what they're doing, what is happening, or who they're dealing with. People join religions for a variety of reasons, often stemming from a desire for belonging, meaning, purpose, or guidance. Religions often offer a tight-knit community that provides a sense of belonging, acceptance, and family-like bonds, which may be lacking in a person's life. While there's nothing wrong with belonging to a religion per se, there are they are things to keep in mind to protect one's own personal identities. Someone can be both religious and spiritual, meaning they actively participate or practice their religion while also seeking deeper personal meaning. But spirituality is more individual and internal journey, whereas religion is a structured system with external practices and community involvement. This part is important. Clear boundaries need to be set to make sure that external religion never hinders or interferes with the internal connection to God. Never substitute an individual, group of individuals, or an organization for that which is good.
You know, and Jesus was really clear on that as well. He said in Matthew 23, "But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in." So he was identifying, and he does this many times, identifying religion as the gatekeeper or the hindrance to that connection with God.
Yep. Yep. They didn't enter into God and they wouldn't let anyone else either. And they knew how because they were the gatekeepers. Agent Smith.
Yeah.
Spirituality is often considered more fluid and flexible, while religion has established rules and guidelines. A spiritual person may focus on personal growth and finding meaning in life, whereas a religious person focuses on following the tenets of their specific faith. Spirituality can be a solitary practice, while religion usually involves a community of believers. Not all religious practices are inherently spiritual, and vice versa. I see. Hey, Roseanne. Is it Roseanne? I see a Roseanne there.
Yeah, Roseanne's in there.
Okay, awesome. Signs of a dangerous religious program. Unwavering devotion to a leader. The group leader is seen as infallible, and their words are taken as absolute truth, often with a cult of personality dynamic. Access to God is solely through this leader. The leader may even claim to be God.
Which is, tricky because the leader is, but it's only you can tell
Yeah,
when
but the
it's
leader isn't saying yes. Okay, so I'll say yes, I'm God, but so are you.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so is everyone that we're talking to.
Right.
We're all God,
But
which is why I'd better treat them all with respect
you're
because
right.
they're God.
Right. But to distinguish and say that I am more God
Yeah.
than you,
He says
or
he just him is God.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's the key difference.
Get this. Mohammed, during some, I don't know what he smoked or what he drank, but he actually said God prays to him. If that's in the Quran, he said it and they wrote it down. So whatever. Um, Isolation from the outside world. Members are discouraged from maintaining relationships with friends and family who are not part of the group. Strict rules and control. The group has strict rules and guidelines governing every aspect of life, including dress, behavior, and personal relationships. Fear-based manipulation. Members are often instilled with fear of leaving the group or facing negative consequences if they do not comply. So, confidentiality and secrecy. This group may be very secretive about their practices and beliefs, discouraging members from discussing details with outsiders. Financial exploitation. Members may be pressured to donate large sums of money to the group leader. Negative view of non-members. The group may portray the outside world as dangerous or evil, further isolating members.
Don't do that meditation. Don't do that yoga. You'll
Yep.
summon spirits, summon
Yeah.
demons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. So let's go back to the beginning. Okay. Unwavering devotion to a leader. Jehovah's Witnesses do that. They are 100% devoted to the governing body and they will not deviate. Isolation from outside world. Jehovah's Witnesses do that. They're completely isolated. Strict rules and control. Jehovah's Witnesses do that. Okay. Fear-based manipulation.
Gaslighting.
Yep. You're going to die in Armageddon and you're going to get disfellowshipped. That's Jehovah's Witnesses do that. Uh, Fear-based manipulation. Jehovah's Witnesses do that with their disfellowshipping policy. Okay. I questioned, and now my whole family won't speak to me. So it happened, right? Confidentiality and secrecy. Jehovah's Witnesses do that. They have a secret elder book. Okay. Financial exploitation. Jehovah's Witnesses do that. They're always asking for money, and their leaders don't work. Okay. Negative view of non-members. Jehovah's Witnesses do that. Wow, they're going 100 for 100.
Yeah, they're pretty religious.
They're pretty religious. They think everyone that's not a Jehovah's Witness worships Satan.
Yeah.
That's everyone. That's like, oh my God. They're like, you're either worship Jehovah, you're either a Jehovah's Witness or you worship Satan. Like, what sort of reasonable, like, oh God. Okay. Wow. Okay. Um, and yet there's like what, 6 million people following that program religiously,
Hmm.
mothers that won't talk to their daughters,
Hmm.
fathers that won't speak to their sons, brothers that won't speak to each other
Hmm.
because one person questioned
The
the
idol.
governing body. They question. Well, maybe I'm not. This seems a little funny. We used to believe this, and now we don't, and now we do. But at any time, but this person got kicked out back when it was not okay, but now it's okay, and they're still out, and they're not
Mhm.
allowed to come back in. Oh, I'm questioning it. Now I'm out. They kicked me out for having a beard, among other things, but they kicked me out for having a beard, and now they're all allowed to have a beard, and I'm not allowed back in. What? Yeah, I'm so glad I'm out of that program because that was retarded. Okay, signs someone has been captured and religiously reprogrammed. So they may have a sudden change in appearance or lifestyle. This could include adopting new clothing styles, hairstyles, or dietary restrictions associated with the group. Excessive use of group jargon, using specific terms or phrases that are only understood by members of the group and drastically changing what is believed. Withdrawal from personal relationships, avoiding contact with friends and family who are not part of the group and replacing them with excessive loyalty to a leader in the religion. Defensiveness when questioned about the group, becoming angry or dismissive when asked questions about their involvement with the group, or showing extreme secrecy about the group, perhaps defending the group even when presented with the concerning information. Prioritizing group activities over personal responsibilities, neglecting work, school, or other obligations to participate in group activities with constant negative talk about the outside world, a strong sense of fear about leaving the group, prioritizing the group's need over their own, often accompanied by a charismatic leader who discourages critical thinking and demands unwavering obedience.
Yep.
They Jehovah's Witnesses get all that too. Now, here's interesting. When you look at that list, there's another group that is actually they're actually a religious group, though they would never think that they are. And 99% of people would never realize that they are, but they absolutely are. And they got 100% of these attributes. Law enforcement.
Yeah. Or
Law
sight.
enforcement, they get a change in lifestyle and appearance.
Hmm.
Got to get that haircut, uniform. They have their own private code or jargon. If they've got friends that aren't quite socially, that aren't good citizens, they might cut them off. Oh, you're an outlaw. You live outside the system. No,
Hmm.
they're very protective and defensive. You gotta say thank you for your service.
Hmm.
You got that thin blue line.
Uh, Julie 63, where do the Amish sit in the construct of religion? Very much a religion.
Very, very much a religion. In fact, they're struggling. They're having a lot of trouble. In our area, there's been something like almost 20 families that have left, but it's difficult for them to leave because the Amish believe in community property.
Hmm.
So if you're Amish and you leave, You basically leave with the clothing on your back because you don't own your house. You don't own your horse or that cute little buggy. You don't own any of your farm equipment or the farm or the animals or any of your resources. So it's exceedingly difficult to escape from the Amish lifestyle. So what happened is that a bunch of them left and then they're helping others to escape.
Mhm.
And that's one of the complaints when I was talking to them is they said, well, they started to realize that the entire religion was just about control.
Mhm.
And it was frustrating for them because they're trying to live and survive. And 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 everything in the Amish lifestyle is about the process and about the ritual. So they have to make the dresses a certain way. And it's expensive. And they can just go to Walmart and just buy a dress and it takes 20 minutes. But no, they have to spend a week or 2 weeks making this thing. And then the women are treated a certain way and the animals are treated a certain way. They're very cruel to their animals. So so it's just, there almost isn't a true religion on earth right now. There are many beneficial spiritualities and a lot of the religions have, certain aspects about them that are good, but they're but every major institute, I mean, because the thing is that evil can't allow the light to shine
Mhm.
because all it takes is one little light and the whole room is lit up. So while evil was in power, it could not allow a single righteous religion to exist. So every last single one of them was systematically infiltrated, taken over, and corrupted. Some of them are worse than others. There's a lot of aspects of the Amish lifestyle that I like. I love hearing them clip clop up and down the road. I wave to them, they wave back to me. I like them. I've never had an actual negative experience with them, but I'd probably feel better. I'd probably feel the same way about them that I feel about Jehovah's Witnesses if I grew up in that religion instead.
Mhm. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's the end of the presentation.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so there's more to do next week.
Yeah. Yeah, so that kind of gives a good foundation. I mean, I might even shift the name of this presentation since we didn't really get into Islam that
And
much.
we didn't really get to.
But this is just sort of setting the stage. So this will be the first episode in the series where we break down religion, and this gives a good baseline of
Almost
like,
2 hours.
yeah, gives a good baseline of like what is religion, how does it show up, and as Darth mentioned at the beginning, this will give us the tools needed so that we can go through together and then individually we can see where are these signs of religion where it shows up and in hopes that that will help us avoid these kind of things. So yeah, was there anybody else with any questions or anything before we start wrapping up?
I did my best with this document.
Yeah, you did a phenomenal job. It's very simple, very.
You are you going to post it on your channel so people can read it?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll post it on my website and I'll link that in the description and the video, and that way you can download it. So I'll just get did you want me to post this copy?
Yeah, yeah, post
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
We can always post updates.
Yeah. So I'll post this copy on my website, justincarpenter.org, so you can always find it there, and I'll make sure it's linked in the video description as well. Um, Lisa says thank you, Darth. Really good.
Oh, you're very welcome. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you guys for being here. And yeah, I think that's a good time to kind of end it before the 2 hour mark, and it'll be a nice little resource for people to use when they start breaking down that initial programming. And yeah, Julie 63 said, "Is the Talmud the second Jewish text?"
It was meant to be. So so originally, um, Mohammed tried to take control of the Jewish narrative, but they rejected him. So if you read the Quran, the first part of it, Muhammad is very favorable toward the Jews, but after they rejected him, then he became very hostile toward them. And much of the Quran is just a rip off of the Bible, a bad rip off. It's not even a good one.
Yeah.
But Muhammad did his work well. He was trained in how to create a religion. by by the Catholics who had already, you know, taken over Christianity and did their thing with that. So he received formal training.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get a lot more into that.
Now I'll have the receipts for that. I'm not just saying that. I'm not making that up. That's a fact.
Yeah. So stay tuned on our announcement for that. I don't know if we'll do it next Sunday, but we might.
Well, shoot, I'll try.
Yeah.
If I can keep it up, I've got a lot of information gathered together that I wasn't able to present in this document. So I'll do the last, quarter of it or fifth of it, whatever's left of this document, and then we'll be able to ask. See, now that we know what religion is, now we can start asking intelligent questions about Islam. What sort of religion is it? What is it? What's the work that Islam did? Who funded it? Who protected it while it was small and vulnerable?
Mm.
What is it doing now? What's the direction that it went in? What are the ideas that are in its sacred text? Does it have a secret sacred text, or is it just the one? Is there a secondary text? How is the authority structure set up within it? There's all kinds of really intelligent questions we can start now that we know about religion. Now there's all kinds of really intelligent questions. So, does Islam encourage you to form your own personal connection to God through within, or is everything through Muhammad?
Everything's doing well. Yeah. Yeah, Lila mentioned How I Escaped My Cult. Season one, episode 5 tells the story of a girl from the Bronx brought into the Nawabian nation led by York.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, that sounds like an interesting show. Yeah, thank you guys for the kind words and
Yes,
appreciate
thank
y'all
you.
for being here. And so yeah, stay tuned on an announcement for the next one. And got anything else to close out? You good? Feel
God
complete?
bless you all.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, we love you guys and
We do.
hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, wherever you are. And until next time, bye everybody. See y'all later.